Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandamanandam advaita purnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham parabrahmarupam ganesham bhajema. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Friends, today is Bhadrapada Shukla Chaturdashi, an auspicious day. On this day, many observe Ananta Chaturdashi Vrata. It is believed that Lord Vishnu appeared on this day as Ananta Padmanabha. The word Ananta means endless. Devotees believe that if the Vrata is observed with utmost devotion to Lord Narayana, he will clear all the difficulties and secure freedom from all sorrows in one's life. On this auspicious day, on behalf of Param Vedanta, Team Param Vedanta, I extend everyone a warm welcome to one and all for today's 114th session of Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. Continuing study of Purushottama Yoga, chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, today verses from 6 to 10 shall be explained by our team of teachers, Param Vedanta teachers, Dr. Anupama, Dr. Sachin, Dr. Vikram Huded, Sri B.S. Kulkarni, and Dr. Manjula. After the presentations, our young Kumari Manvi shall chant the day's verses. Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir will give us an introduction to the day's topics as well as highlight the important aspects of each verse. Let us commence with a recap of the previous session by Dr. Satyanarayan Lale. Over to Dr. Satyanarayana.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga, is an important and popular chapter of Gita. It is often used as a prayer verse before taking food. Samsara is entanglement in the web of Anatma by losing sight of Atma Tattvam in ourselves. The first 2.5 verses of this chapter describes samsara so that seeker will know samsara nivrutti or moksha. And moksha is freedom from samsara. Only when the seeker understands the value of moksha, he will turn his attention to the means of attaining moksha. The value for the means is directly proportional to the value of the end. And to describe this samsara, Krishna compares it to a huge peepal tree or Ashwatha tree. Ashwatha means that which is ever changing, constantly changing. This comparative analogy of samsara to Ashwatha tree has already been done in Kathopanishad. And here Swamiji has described 10 common features listed like this. Mahatvam, both are huge and vast. Adi Anta Rahitam, the beginning and the end of both are not traceable. Anirvachaniyatvam, logically uncategorizable. Is it the cause or effect, or fate or free will? Moolatvam, got the root. The support of the tree is invisible root and Bhagavan is also invisible. Shakatvam, branches at different levels in tree, so is higher and lower lokas in the universe. Paranavatvam, full of leaves, as leaves have photosynthesis, karmakanda protect samsara and generate karmaphalams. Phalavatvam, bears fruits which may be either sweet, sour or mixed. Similarly, samsara vriksha gives sukha, dukkha or mixed phalani. Ashrayavatvam, nesting site for birds. Similarly, the Jivas nestle in Swarga, Manushya or Adholokas. Chalanavatvam, movement brought about by powerful wind. Similarly, the samsara tree are swayed by the wind of prarabdha karma. Chedyatvam, can be uprooted. Similarly, the huge samsara tree can be uprooted with dispassion, which come with jnana. Now, let us see verse 15.1. In this verse, Lord Krishna speaks of eternal Ashwatha tree, which is upside down with its roots above and branches below. Its roots are going upwards, that is Urdhva Moolam, originating from God, nourished and supported by him. The trunk and the branches which are extending downward, adho shakham, encompass all the life form from different abodes of the material realm. Its leaves are Vedic mantras, chandansi, which describes rituals, ceremonies, and its rewards. The leaves nourishes the material existence of the souls and perpetuate the continuous cycle of life and death. Due to this continuity, the beginning and the end are not experienced by the souls. Hence, this tree form of the world is avyayam or eternal. The intention of describing this tree in the Vedas was to make us understand that we are beyond the cycle of life and death, and we should work towards cutting this tree. For the same purpose, Lord Krishna has mentioned that one who understands the secret of cutting this tree of samsara is the knower of Vedas. In verse 15.2, Lord Krishna goes on to explain that while in the human form, the soul performs the karmas, which is the trunk of the tree, and its branches, the shakas, expand both upward and downward. The soul performed in its past and present form, it is reborn. If it led to a virtuous life, when reborn, it moves to upwards branches which denote celestial abodes. In case the soul was involved in sinful act, in the next birth, it gets degraded to downward branches which are for animal species. Similar to how water irrigates a tree, the three modes of material nature or the three gunas irrigate this eternal tree of material existence. The sense objects generated by these gunas are like buds in the tree which sprout, causing further growth or material desires. And to satiate these desires, a living being performs karmas. But these desires are unending and keep on increasing. Eventually, the soul gets further entangled into this web of material consciousness. So, Brahman is compared to, next slide, sir, Brahman is compared to the primary root of samsara tree, the entire visible universe to the trunk and branches, the karma kanda, which is the ritualistic part of Vedas, to the leaves which perpetuate the samsara vriksha, mulani anusantatani, the secondary roots spread all over, which are raga dvesha, and karmanu bandhini, the consequence of this raga dvesha vasanas are the variety of karmas. Next slide. This huge tree can be cut with dispassion, says Lord Krishna. The remedy for the soul's never-ending suffering is detachment. The acts of detachment can cut the roots of desire, which are nourished by three modes of material nature. The Lord Krishna explains that this acts of detachment can only be developed with the knowledge of self. With the detachment, one can stop further growth of the tree roots, and due to lack of nourishment, the tree starts to wither. Therefore, the only way to cut down this Ashwatha tree is by totally surrendering to the Supreme Lord and taking his refuge. Hereafter, next slide, from the second half of the verse 15.3, Lord Krishna has revealed the requirements for the process to surrender to the Supreme Lord, who is at the base of this enigmatic Ashwatha tree. Samsara Nivrutti Upaya. Krishna talks about four methods or four disciplines. The first step is Asanga or Vairagyam. Next, he talks about Parimargitavyam or Vedanta Vichara, which is inquiry into the root of Samsara Vriksha. Next, he tells Prapadye, meaning Sharanagati or surrender to devotion. Lastly, he talks about Sadguna, developing a healthy, refined mind. So this verse 15.5 talks about the values or Sadgunas for the developing healthy, refined mind. And these values are freedom from pride, freedom from delusion, conquering evil of attachment, committed to spiritual pursuit, free from desires, and ability to withstand the opposites. So, next slide. Whereas Vairagyam, Sharanagati, and Sadguna give Jnana Yogyata, it is actually the Vedanta Vichara, which actually is Jnana Yoga. So, in couple of next verses, we see Lord Krishna explaining the nature of eternal abode. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Satyanarayana, for an excellent summary of the initial 5 verses of the 5th chapter. And it is so well summarized, it is worth listening to once again. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. As we heard already, we are studying the Purushottama. This is this Purushottama Yoga, one of the shortest but one of the most wonderful chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna takes us to the highest peak possible in the Bhagavad Gita. You will have one more peak in the 18th chapter, where you will hear Krishna wants us to understand who is this Purushottama. And Swamiji very clearly tells us Purushottama in this chapter is none other than Kshetrajna of the 13th chapter, Gunatita of the 14th chapter, which is none other than Brahman or Atma. And this chapter contains the essence of all the Upanishads. As described already by Dr. Satyanarayana, the chapter begins by a description of the Samsara and what are those 4 methods that will help us to go into liberation. And Brahman in the form of everything, Brahman being Purushottama. Our lives are difficult. All of us are going through various difficulties. This world is a mixture of both pleasure and pain. However, if a person is able to understand the mystery of life, then the person will be able to live and survive in the same world without being adversely affected by the painful aspects of the world. And Swamiji tells us the key is through mind mastery. A weak mind will suffer in the same world, whereas a strong mind will help us to get through liberation. The 4 important spiritual disciplines, the first is Vairagya or Asangatva. The very strong verse that came in the last class was Asanga Shastrena Dridena Chitva. One has to be able to relate to people, persons, possessions in such a way that you can relate very closely. And that word will be immanent but transcendental. You are very close, but at the same time not affected. And that is the understanding of Vairagya. Spiritual freedom is possible only with all this is based on good values. One of the important things to learn in this chapter is acceptance, prapadyate, to be able to surrender. Surrender means I accept completely whatever is choiceless. Whatever I can change, I should be able to have the courage to change. But whatever is subject to me choicelessly, my own body, the limitations of my body, my family, my profession, if I'm able to accept it, then that is one other nice point brought out in this chapter. And another point is parimargitavyam, exactly what we are doing in this class, doing a spiritual inquiry into who is this Jiva, what is this Jagat, who is this Ishvara, why am I in bondage, what are the sadhanas that will help me to go away, and what is my final goal or moksha. From today's class, we enter into one of the most wonderful aspects of this chapter, which I can also call it as Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam, to be able to see Isha or the Lord in and through everything. Of course, because this is the Upanishads, the word was going to be Brahman. Now, and this chapter classifies the whole world into 2. That which is inanimate, which is I can see and experience as existence, and the animate world. So I am animate because I'm able to speak. You are also animate. You are able to listen and interact. Now, this Jiva in all of us, which is a combination of existence and consciousness. And in today's class, Sri Krishna will use a very strong word, vimuda na Nu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. Although you're keeping your eyes open, you're not able to see me. You're not able to see me in yourself, or you're not able to see me in the world outside you. You must be a real Muda means a fool. Vimuda means particularly foolish. So Krishna uses strong words if you are not able to see Sri Krishna everywhere. The next chapter, where Sri Krishna classifies into an introduction as what is this Purushottama. He introduces what is Kshara Purusha, that which is decaying in front of us. Then there is something called the Akshara Purusha, that which does not decay. And in addition to these two things, there is one conscious principle which is aware of that which is manifest and that which is unmanifest, which he calls Purushottama. And finally, Sri Krishna will conclude in the climax of the 15th chapter, where he says, Yo mam eva asammodaha janati Purushottama. The whole objective of this chapter is you have to be very clear about who is this Purushottama. And then he will say, for such a person, he who understands and who knows who is Purushottama, a person attains to Krita Kritasya Bharata. Such a person attains to the highest fulfillment ever and attains to Parama Purushartha. As I said, nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita you reach such a peak. Of course, in the Charama Shloka, which says, again, Sri Krishna has the last peak, Sarva Dharman Parityagya, Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Surrender to me alone. Give up everything else. I will take care of all your karmic debts and I will ensure that you get moksha. So this is this beautiful chapter. And when you have such an opportunity to study a beautiful chapter, it is my wish that all of us put our heart and soul to be able to understand each of these verses. You know, this is very similar to when I see medical students, medical graduates who are working for the PG program. How much effort people do to get a PG program, how many months to get a PG program. And I see those who get into the program, they are like a burnout. They have, they have never get into such intensity. For worldly things, we're able to give up or given so much. Why not for Parama Purushartha? With that, we will listen to Dr. Anupama, who will explain to a wonderful verse of this chapter. Dr. Anupama, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, chapter 15, verse 6. Na tat bhasayati surya, na shashanko na pavakara, yed gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. This is a Brahma Lakshana shloka. It is based on a mantra both from Mundaka and Katopanishad, which goes like this. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra taratam, nema vidyuto bhanti, kuto ayam agnihi, tam eva bhantam anubhati sarvam, tasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhanti. The essence of this mantra is Atma is ever the experiencer subject and never the experienced object. In and through all experiences, the Atma is self-evident as Prati Bodha Viditam Matam. Self-evident means it is Swayam Prakashatvam. Atma is compared to a light because it illumines all of the Anatma. Illumination in Vedanta means an unknown object being made known. The illuminator is called light or pramanam. A pramana or light reveals a prameyam. Every sense organ, actually every word, is referred to as light because it reveals an object or at least aids some inference. For example, nose makes smell known. Therefore, nose is the illuminator of smell. The mind illuminates all the sense organs. Therefore, the mind is the illuminator of the sense organs. But it is the consciousness which makes the mind sentient. Therefore, consciousness is the ultimate illuminator or light of all lights. Jyotishyam Jyoti. It is called Tad Dhama in this verse. Here Krishna says, nothing can illumine Tad Dhama, that Brahman. the Tejo Rupa Padam, the Jnana Swarupa Brahman. Therefore, consciousness is ever the revealer and never the revealed. So, how many illuminators are there? Only one, the Atma, which is Sarva Pramana Agochara. Anya Devata Tad Viditat Aviditat Iti. Therefore, we say, Suryana Bhati, the sun cannot illumine the Atma, na Chandra, neither the moon, na Tarakam, neither to the stars, na Vidyut, neither to the flashes of lightning. Kutto Ayam Agnihi, definitely not the fire or the small diya which we use in Deeparadhana. None of these can illumine Brahman. Actually, there is no need because Brahman is self-evident. Tat Dhama cannot be illumined. Why? Tasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhati. And Krishna says, Tad mama paramam dhama. That destination is my higher nature, my paraprakriti, my nirguna, nirvikara, satya, chetana tattvam. Now, how does the jnani reach this paramam dhama or Krishna's abode? We know Bhagavan is all-pervading. Can his abode also be all-pervading? No. Bhagavan's abode is his very nature, the all-pervading consciousness. So how does one get there? Being all-pervading, Paramatma is available as Jivatma, the enclosed consciousness in each and every one of us. Krishna describes this as Mama Eva Amsha in the next verse. So that Brahman is I, the consciousness. And reaching that Brahman is not a physical event, but an intellectual process. Krishna says that this knowledge of Jnanam itself is merger into Brahman. Yet Gatva means having intellectually reached. Na Nivartante means there is no return to Samsara. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama, for a nice explanation of this verse, which is another what we call as Brahma Lakshana Shloka. That means if you understand this verse, you have a nice definition of our true nature, which is none other than Brahman. Now, when you're trying to explain to somebody what this Brahman is, which is not an object at all, then you have a lot of difficulty. And that is why all the explanation is so indirect. He says that place, that Brahman, is not something that can be illumined by the sun or the moon or the stars or by fire. Then you begin to think, is it some dark place? But then there is another verse which says, Yat gatva na nivartante tad dhamma paramam. Once you get there, there is no question of going out. That means you can check in, but you cannot check out. Some time ago, there was a song called Hotel California, where you can get in, but you cannot get out. Is it such dark place like that? This is the problem in trying to describe what Brahman is. Remember, we are talking about our true nature. Our nature of which is the self-illumined consciousness, the very subject. The more I understand my true nature, suddenly I discover that I don't have to travel because the goal is none other than myself. Once this understanding is there, then there is no question of an ignorance. There is no question of falling back. All I need to remove is my misconception. If this mantra, this verse of the Bhagavad Gita is understood, we understand that very popular mantra, na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, which comes in the Upanishads, and then also in the Sri Dakshinamurti Stotra, nana chidra gata udara deepa prabhabasuram janati. Once you know yourself, that consciousness, that which illumines everything else. The next verse, verse number 7, will be explained to us by Dr. Sachin. Dr. Sachin, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The verse goes like this. Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha manashashtanindriyani prakrutistani karshati. In the next slide, we see the word-to-word meaning. A part of myself alone is in the form of eternal Jiva, the Jiva Bhuta. In the world of beings, Jiva Loke. He pulls the 5 sense organs with the mind as the 6th, which resides in the body. We see the next slide. With the previous verse, Krishna has completed the Moksha Sadhanani. Now from this verse up to the 11th verse, Shri Krishna is explaining Brahman as the universal form. To understand that he is in everyone and everything is in him, we need to take some examples as we see in the next slide. What is meant by Karya Karana Sambandha? Brahman is the Karana and Jiva of the Jiva and Jagat is the Karyam. But to understand Brahman, which is not seen, felt, touched, or even heard by our senses, we need to understand this by examples like the wooden furniture has always wood in it. And next, there is clay in every pot. Next, every bangle, the source is gold. Golden bangle, the source is gold. So here the karya, that is the furniture or the pot or the bangles, needs the karana, the wood, clay or the gold. And thus Jiva Jagat Karanam is none other than the Brahman. Now let us extend this binary example to triangular one as seen in this slide with a simple physics example. With the source of the torch and only to a mirror that it is reflecting towards the reflective surface. So in the next slide, we will expand and see the sun is, in the next slide, we'll see the sun is illuminating the dark room through the reflective mirror. If we remove the mirror, the sunlight won't reach to the dark room. And if also the sunlight is not there, then there is no use of the reflective medium as such. So we collaborate these findings of the original consciousness, reflective medium and receiver in the next slide. That is, original consciousness is none other than Brahman, which is present always. Here the Jagat or the illumined dark room is only possible through the reflective medium, the body and mind, which is the individual Jiva. So the first line, Mama Eva Amsha Jiva Bhuta, myself alone is the Jiva, and Jiva Loke, myself is the world too. How many original consciousness are required? Only one. But how many reflective mediums can be there? There can be many. In the next line, Krishna tells us what happens after death to the mind and the body. As we have known till now, the mind is the reflective medium which borrows the sentiency from the original consciousness and lends it to the sense organs through which we see the world Jagat. So during death, this borrowed consciousness ceases to exist. Due to this, the Jiva or the organs dies. But the original consciousness is everlasting, permanent, eternal, and it continues to be there. Once again, we understand that consciousness makes the mind sentient, which is the subtle part of Jiva. And this mind makes the gross body sentient. So one has to remember, behind every life body, there is a life mind. Even though I don't see it, just like this example, the electricity is not seen, but the filament in the bulb and the bulb itself glows only due to the electricity. So in the next slide, what Krishna, this is the Stula Sharira and Sukshma Sharira, and the original consciousness is the electricity. And finally, in the next verse, Krishna would explain the journey of this Jiva and Jagat, consisting of the body, mind, with the sixth function is mind. What will happen when it takes the new Sharira in the next verse? Hari Om.
Thank you, Sachin, for trying to explain through various illustrations what Shri Krishna wants us to see. Shri Krishna wants us to see the Shri Krishna principle, which manifests in the form of consciousness in all of us in these set of verses. And he says that I alone am there in all of you, in all the Jivas, that Sanatana, that permanent is none other than me. And this, in order to manifest, Karshati is able to draw the mind and sense organs. And it is through this medium of the mind and sense organs that I am able to manifest. In the next verse, he will continue to explain what happens when a person dies. And that will be explained to us by Dr. Vikram Huded. Dr. Vikram Huded, please.
Om Gurubhyo Namaha. Shariram yad avapnoti yaccha api utkramati Ishwaraha grihitva etani samyati vayur gandhan iva asayat. The Lord pulls the sense organs when he leaves the body. When he acquires another body, he moves with these organs just as the wind moves with the fragrance from one place to another. Yacha means yadacha. Utkramati, the Jiva leaves the body. And how do you complete the sentence? You go to the previous sloka and complete. When the Jiva leaves the body, it carries the sense organs and the mind. Now the next question is, what will the Jiva do next? We are all eager to know. Krishna answers that question. Shariram apnoti Ishwaraha. Ishwara means this Jiva, who is the Lord of the body. Jiva itself is called here Ishwara. We have to carefully note. Why is Jiva called Ishwaraha? Because of two reasons. First reason is Ishwara alone is in the form of Jiva when he is reflected. After all, Jiva is what? Reflected version. The problem is that there is some distortion in the reflection, and that is the only thing. But Jiva is Ishwara reflected in the mind. Therefore, Jiva is called Ishwaraha. And the second reason is Ishwara means the master, the Lord. And Jiva is called Ishwara, the master, because Jiva is the Lord of the individual body, because only his presence makes the body alive and his absence makes the body dead. And therefore, Ishwara means Sharirasya Swami. And this Swami Jivaha, after leaving this body, what does he do? Shariram avapnoti. He takes another body. As I said, Uttama, Madhyama, or Adhama. There is no rule that human being will take only human birth. There is a human being can become a deva, one of the gods also. Human being can become another human being, or even inferior janmas are possible. Then the next question is, who determines? Is it Bhagavan? We want to put the blame on someone. Shastra says, do not blame anyone. It is totally dependent on the karma. And the karma is dependent on karta. And you are the karta, and therefore you alone determine your next janma. And in the 6th chapter, Krishna gives a great consolation for us. All the Gita students will never take lower janma. So we should be regular in classes. So all the Gita students, of course, they will get liberation. No janma at all. But if at all they do not get liberation, the next janma will be invariably Manushya janma. And the Shariram avapnoti. When the Jiva takes another body, what does he do? He has taken all the indriyas, sense organs from the previous body, and all those sense organs he will place in the respective physical plane. The sense organs must be placed. The sense organ in the Chaksur Gokulam. Just as when we shift the house, we would have taken the kitchen material, study room material, and place them appropriately when we go to the next house. So rebirth is nothing but a transfer. Therefore, you need not feel bad about it. Therefore, Krishna says, Grihit Vaitani Samyati. Etani means that what all the sense organs in the mind, the Jiva carries along with it. Samyati travels, and he gives an example. Vayu Gandhan Iva Asayat. Vayu means the wind or the breeze, which is compared to Jiva. And imagine there is a flower. The flower is compared to the physical body. Because it is visible and the flower has got the fragrance is compared to the Sukshma Shariram, invisible mind. So the invisible Vayu, wind, carries the invisible fragrance from the visible flower and travels. And how do you know Vayu carries the fragrance? You can feel the smell. Therefore, just as the invisible Vayu carries the invisible fragrance, similarly, the invisible Jiva carries the invisible mind from the physical body. Asaya means flower, Gandhan means fragrance, Vayu, the wind. And the next question, they will ask it, how long does it take to take the next body? It all will depend upon the fructification of the next karma. It can be 1 day, 1 year, or 1 lakh years. It will vary from individual to individual. Therefore, there is no regular rule. And secondly, once the Jiva quits this body, another important fact we should remember is this particular time and space will become irrelevant for the Jiva which has quit this body. You should remember that this time and space are relevant only when you function through this body. That shows how time and space are highly relative. That is why the moment you withdraw from this body and enter the dream body, for your dream experience, you have different time and space field. So if this is true for your dream experience, extend it to other 13 lokas. Each loka is a distinct like your dream world, which means the present time and space are meaningless. Therefore, how can you measure the duration of Jiva's travel based on your present time and space? What is 100 years for us? Maybe 1 year or 1 day. Therefore, we cannot say that. This is why Shastra says, when you are doing Shraddham, do for 3 generations. We simply obey them. It is not based on when the Jiva takes rebirth. So, Vayur Gandhan Asaya Tiva, Ishwaraha Etani Grihitva Samyati. And what Krishna wants us to remember is, we should not forget our primary topic. The sentience of the body is the proof for the presence of the mind, and the presence of live mind is the proof for the existence of God. And therefore, life is the proof for the presence of God, and death is a bigger proof for the presence of the Lord. Because when the body becomes dead body, what has happened? The Ishvara's blessing in the form of reflected consciousness is withdrawn. When Ishvara is there in this body, I am alive. When Ishvara has quit this body, Ishvara means we should understand, is in the form of Chidabhasa, has quit the body, and the body becomes dead. So life is a proof for the Lord, and death is a proof for the Lord. And the next verse, he will say that between life and death, whatever mischief activities you undertake, they are also the proof for the presence of the Lord. How can you miss that, Lord? It is like asking, what is the proof that there is electricity? Sitting under a fan, sitting in a well-light room, what is the proof for electricity? That he is able to see, that he is able to feel the breeze of the fan is a proof for the invisible electricity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vikram, for a nice explanation. Shariram yadapnoti. When a person takes on to a new body, what happens when a person takes a new body? When a person dies, what is left behind is the gross body remains. It is death really happens when the subtle body separates from the gross body, and it is the subtle body that which travels, and it is the subtle body which looks for another suitable medium to function. And Shariram Yadapnoti is when it enlivens another new body. Now, with all these graphic examples of exactly what happens when a person dies, we should not forget the main topic. What is the main topic? Whenever there is life anywhere, let us look for that enlivening principle. That enlivening principle which allows me to speak is the original consciousness which Shri Krishna speaks, Mamai Amsha Jiva Loke. What is that which allows me to listen? It is that same principle. And therefore, Prati Bodha Viditam Matam. In every experience, let me come to the experiencer. More details of this will be explained in the next verse by Kulkarni. Kulkarni, sir.
Hari Om, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is having a unique message. Bhagavan praises this as a secret Shastra. It optimizes the teachings of whole Vedanta systematically developing the logical ideas, building up the theory of spiritual wisdom. He explains methodically from known to unknown, samsari to jnani, from ignorance of reality to the realization of the self. Gita Acharya starts explaining samsara, which he compared to the Ashwatha tree and binding forces of karma and gunas. He continued to suggest a solution for liberating from bondage. From the last two verses, he is elaborating about Jiva and its transmigration. Bhagavan clarified that the death of the physical body is not an end. A subtle body continues its journey in the new body to act and experience. In this verse, Bhagavan explaining the function of subtle body and how it acts and experience with the world of objects. Slides. In the slide, Shotram Chakshuspashanam cha Rasanam Ghranameva cha Adhisthanamanachayam Vishayanupasevate. Shotram, ears, Chakshu, eyes, Sparshanam, touch, Rasanam, taste, Grana, smell, presiding Adhisthana, Manaha, with the mind, I am this Jiva, Upasevate, experiences. Presiding over the ear, eyes, touch and taste and smell, mind experiences these sense objects. Atma is all pervading with the divine nature of Satchit Ananda, that is, with existence, consciousness, and the absolute happiness. Jiva is a reflected consciousness and identified with the individual upadhis. Mind, which is subtle in nature, capable of reflecting the higher nature and borrow the existence and consciousness and transmits to the different components of the perceptions of Jnanendriyas. Mind receives the sensory data from Jnanendriyas and sends the direction to Karmendriyas to act and experience. Intellect being decisive with the past experience and knowledge and sends the solution and decisions. Mind with the ahankara under the control of gunas start functioning and experiences with the acts and with the world of objects through sense organs and hearing, seeing, touching, tasting and smelling using the components of ears, eyes, skin, tongue and the nose. It functions separately with the ego dweller in the body and enjoy according to the parabdha. Detailed classification we can have by the function of the subtle body, and there are 19 components. Jnanendriyas 5, Karmendriyas 5, Pranas 5, internal organs 5. Jnanendriyas are ear, eye, skin, tongue and nose. Karmendriyas, hands, legs, speech, genital organ and anus. Pranas, prana, apana, udana and vyana and samana. Internal organs are mind, intellect, ego, memory and ahankara. Mind receives the sensory data from the Jnanendriyas and sends the directions to the Karmendriyas to act and experience. Intellect being decisive with the past experience and knowledge and sense solutions and decisions. Ego identifies the I-ness in each action, in each actions and experience. Memory, the storage device. On the analysis of Panchakosha Viveka, we can conclude that the subtle and the gross bodies are inert by nature. Subtle body can reflect consciousness from higher nature, become sentient and transmit to the gross body to act and experience according to the gunas of the individual. A sadhaka who is on the path of spiritual evolution can understand this and others cannot, which will be explained in the next verse. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Shri Kulkarni, for giving a lot of basic knowledge. Why is this all important? If a person has to explain these verses one has to go into certain technical nature of what is this gross body, what is the subtle body, various components of the subtle body, what is this mind. And when you go through certain basic texts like the Tattva Bodha and compare it with modern neurosciences, you will see there is so much of wisdom that is available by the rishis who may not have studied the human body like we have instruments to study. And yet through their spiritual eyes are able to give us such a clear understanding which is in accord with modern neurosciences. Essentially through all these verses, this verse of the Kenopanishad, Prati Bodha Viditam Matam, every moment of life, in every experience of life, can I come in touch with that experiencer? And that is the purpose that Shri Krishna is trying to highlight these verses. The last verse for this class will be explained by Dr. Manjula. Dr. Manjula, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Moving from preparatory verses to the crucial verse, which goes like this. Utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimuda na anupashyanti panshanti gnana chakshushaha. The word meaning is as follows. Vimudaha, the deluded ones, na anupashyanti, do not recognize him. Utkramantam, who leaves the body. Sthitam va api, who resides in the body. Bhunjanam va, who experiences the objects. Gunanvitam, and who has gunas. Jnana chakshushaha, those who have the eye of wisdom. Pashyanti, recognize him. In this crucial verse, Krishna says, for a discerning mind, Brahman is recognizable in every activity of the individual, in every function of the Jiva. In the previous example given by Dr. Sachin, using the mirror and the electric gadgets example, the same example can be used to understand about discerning original consciousness from the reflected consciousness, and also understanding about the Chidabhasa. For example, we use the mirror to apply tilakam or kumkumam on our face. So in that, we discern from reflected consciousness of the original consciousness. At the same time, when there are any issues on the face, for example, block spot, we try to correct using the reflection on our original face. Similarly, we experience the abhasa chaitanyam every moment. Therefore, Krishna says mature people appreciate every moment. Therefore, every moment, and appreciate God in every presence, every breath. How? Through Gnana Chakshushaha. Gnana Chakshushaha means the third eye, which helps in understanding the invisible. People with the eye of discernment, called Gnana Chakshushu, can identify the God. For example, behind functioning of any electric gadget, for example, running a fan, there is an invisible electricity. Similarly, body is like a fan. There is an invisible Brahman, invisible consciousness which touches the body. Both body and mind are inert in nature, but through an extraneous factors, they become sentient. So this is called Atma Anatma Vivekaha, which can be understood through Gnana Chakshushaha. Through Gnana Chakshu, one can discern the Chidabhasa, the Jiva, which is none other than the Brahman. The Brahman avataram is Jiva. He is residing in the body, that is Sthitam, keeping the body alive and experience the world, called Bhunjana. Bhunjana means the experience. Experience that we experience the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. These Chit in the form of Chidabhasa alone experience them. Hence, by residing in the body, experiences the world. Every experience generates a response, which can be divided as sattvic, tamasic, and rajasic responses. These are called gunanvitam. So Sri Adi Shankaracharya calls it as sukha, dukkha, and moha responses. Guna refers to varieties of reactions. called Anvitam. The Jivatma is endowed with these threefold reactions, and every reaction reveals the presence of Brahman in the body. And the next slide we'll see one example is given. During the death, the dead body cannot experience any reactions because there is no Jiva in it. So hence, mature people understand and the presence of the Brahman in that. So in this, as Dr. Hegde sir mentioned, Krishna used the strong word called Vimudaha, means they are immature, they are indiscriminate, non-discerning people. So they don't recognize the presence of Brahman. Na anupashyanti, na pashyanti. They think that the body has got consciousness of its own. This is called the materialistic philosophy or Charuvaka Matam. They believe that body has got the natural life. They do not recognize it. Swami Paramarthananda mentions that body can never have a life of its own. If the body has a life, it is the gift of the Lord alone. In concluding, the deluded ones do not recognize him who leaves the body, who resides in the body, who experiences the objects, and who has gunas. Those who have the eye of wisdom recognize him. Harimam. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manjula, for a nice explanation of this verse. Very strong words, and that is why these verses have to be studied and remembered. Utkramantam stitam va. That means whether you are giving up this body or whether you are living in this body. You will remember in the opening teaching verse, 2nd chapter, verse 11. Gata soon, agata soon. Those whose breath is gone, utkramantam, or those whose breath is not yet gone. We are among those categories of people whose last breath is still there, who still are breathing. Now, can we therefore, before we utkramantam, before we give up our last breath, before we come to that state when there is no more breathing, let us be able to understand this, and we will not come under the category of what Krishna says, oh Vimodaha, oh fool. You're keeping your eyes open, but you're not able to see me. Swamiji gives a very powerful example where a mother is asking her young son, because there is no electricity at home, go to the next apartment and find out if there is electricity there. That little boy rings the bell, the doorbell rings, and as he opens, the fan is on, the TV is on, and with a childish drawl, he asks, Mama has asked me to find out if there is electricity power in your house. Now, for a small boy, you can understand, but if a grown-up does that, if I am seeing this vibrant, conscious, existent world, and if I am not able to see Bhagavan in and through all my experiences, Shri Krishna uses a strong word, vimoda. In the Bhajagovindam, Govindam Majamodamate, samprapte nahi rakshati dukrin karate. So Krishna, there he used the word modamate, oh fool. Here using a bigger word, vimodaha. So let us train ourselves. This is our objective as we study each verse, that in every experience, I come in touch with the experiencer. We will listen to these verses chanted by young Manvi. Manvi, please.
Friends, we shall be back with our 115th session to continue study of the 15th chapter. But before that, join us at 6:45 p.m. local time on Monday, 5th September for our 26th session of Disha, a series specifically designed for discovery of inner strength and happiness, where for a holistic understanding, we shall have one topic and concept, but explained from two texts. From Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, covering the second part of Dhyana Yoga, from verses 10 to 15, Antaranga Sadhana shall be explained. From Tattva Bodha, under the topic of Upasana Yoga, the subtopic, the verbal conditioning, Anudvega Karam, harmless, Satyam, truthful, Priyam, agreeable, Hitam, helpful, shall be the focus points. Join on time to listen, learn, and implement these important aspects in our sadhana. Our hearty thanks to all the participants for joining us today in today's study. To sweet little Manvi, thank you for your wonderful chanting in your sweet voice. Pranams to our respected Dr. Timoppa Hegde. Thanks to all the teachers of Param Vedanta for your excellent presentations with wonderful illustrative slides. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.